And we are live on YouTube. It looks like it's starting to stream up right now. And let me make sure that I'm recording on my computer. Record. Stop this real quick. Record on my computer. And this is the Male Entrepreneur Podcast, episode number 125. And we are live in 3, 2. All right. Welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur with your host, Purdeep Sangha. Purdeep, how you doing today, man?
Doing pretty awesome, man. I'm doing pretty good. I think we got some really good stuff to talk about today. I'm excited to talk about it, but I'm doing good. Family's good. Everything's good. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. I'm watching you on the video. For the people that only listen to the podcast episodes, they can check out video over at YouTube for Men. And I'm seeing the Male Entrepreneur logo behind you in the window, and it looks like a beautiful day out. And I love the Male Entrepreneur logo. I'm a Leo, so lions have a certain affinity for me anyways, but I just love that logo, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I'm getting attached to it now. People are always joking. They're like, is that a lion? Is that a transformer? They're trying to figure out which one it is. So I always tell them, pick whichever one you like the most.
It does kind of remind me of the Transformers too. So maybe that's why I also like it, because I was an 80s baby and I grew up on the Transformers.
Yeah, didn't you love the Transformers? They were awesome. I actually enjoy the recent movies. Well, they're not recent anymore. It's probably been a decade since they released the first one. But those were pretty good movies. I enjoyed them.
Yeah, the more recent one, the Bumblebee one, I think was my favorite one out of all of them. I don't know if you saw that one or not.
Oh, was it? Yeah. That was actually a pretty good one. I did like that one, yeah.
Okay, so a weird transition into something completely opposite of what we were just talking about. We've got a episode lined up for the listeners today, and we're going to be talking about goal setting and the importance of it, and maybe doing a little bit of a dive into how to set effective goals. And I want to start off the conversation by bringing up something that wasn't on the show notes, but something that I see plagues humanity. Most people don't set goals at all. Most people just they're a victim to life. They're a victim to circumstances. And it's even like a mental plague now of this happened to me, and that's why I'm at this point. It seems like most people don't even realize that they can set goals and take charge in their own life. And I wanted to before we even start on the other stuff, I wanted to get your take on why goal setting is such a uncommon thing in the first place.
Wow. You know what? In all honesty, I think a lot of our behavior in society today is stemmed on how we grow up in the school system that we have. And I don't remember in school them really teaching you how to set effective goals. Yeah, they talk about grades, for example, and stuff like that, but they don't teach you the practical stuff in life, like relationships and goal setting, or even finances, for example. They don't teach any of that good stuff in school. So I think this is a result of how we grow up, basically, because I think if people understand the power of goals, and I think if kids understood the power of goals, I think they'd carry that throughout their entire life as a life skill. That's just something that I think is important. So people, I think, if we take a look at why people don't set goals, I think in a lot of situations, here's my personal opinion, is that I think a lot of people don't want to feel disappointed by not hitting the goals. I think that's the one thing. And if we talk about setting a goal, for example, and we don't achieve it ourselves, well, that's one thing. But what if someone else finds out, right? And then how are they going to look at us? So all of these things kind of compound. I think it just really comes down to people having belief in themselves. And if you have belief in yourself that you set a goal, that you can actually attain it, right? It goes back to that old saying that in Think and Grow Rich, what the mind can can conceive and believe it can achieve. And I think that's ultimately what goal setting is about. You got to be able to conceive it first and conceive it accurately, because if you can conceive it accurately, it almost becomes like an obsession. And I want to be very careful with that, because there's people that can be too obsessed with their goals, right? There's guys that I used to be like this at a particular time in my life too, when I was so focused on working out, for example. If me and my buddies went out, I'd be like, nah, I can't eat that particular food because you know what? I gotta be in this shape or whatever. But now if I'm going out, I'm gonna have a meal that I enjoy. So I think it just depends on where you're at.
I I I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do want to add something to it. It seems like a lot of people are just happy to go through life completely aimless, and uh, a lot of times, if you don't have a direction, if you don't know where you want to go, there's no way of getting there. And we look at these high achievers, people that own businesses and people that become multi-million dollar CEOs and become the leaders of these giant brands. And a lot of times the way people, the average person looks at them is like, well, that's for them. They're special somehow. They were blessed, or they have privilege, or they have something special about them that makes it, and they don't realize that, no, they just decided, they said, this is where I want to go, and they started figuring out how to get there. Whereas most people just kind of just mindlessly go through life, or directionlessly go through life. Man, that was hard for me to get that word out. But I think that there's a lot of people that just don't even realize that they can take control of their lives.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. When I talk about being a mindful alpha male, that's the one of the most important things. And I had this in one of my workshops where a gentleman said, because you know me, right? When it comes to being a man and being a leader, I'm hardcore on that, because I think that's our role. We really need to step up. In one of my workshops, I had a gentleman say, well, if everybody becomes a leader, if every guy becomes a leader, then there'll be no followers. And I remember sitting there and thinking about the response to this. And I basically responded with a question. I said, what do you think the chances are that every guy is going to become a leader? And you could just tell by the look on his face, he just kind of put his head down. And this wasn't a derogatory comment. This was basically me asking, like, what do you think the chances are? And he pretty much just answered himself. The chances of every guy stepping up and being a leader in his life or leader for others is very slim. So we're always going to have that follower mentality. We're taught to be followers, and in a lot of aspects, from school all the way, in the corporate world or in work life. You got a manager, you got to follow what your manager says. All of these things teach us that we need to follow certain people. And so people get accustomed to living a life that other people tell them that they should live. I think that's ultimately what it is. And so if you break out of that, if you have a goal that's not part of your normal lifestyle, it's going to feel uncomfortable. When I went to India, for example, there there are generations of people that are basically, they're raised into poverty. They're raised into being a servant because that's who their parents were, for example, and their grandparents were. And I just looked, and there's very little way for them to get out of that, because their society looks at them that way. They look at themselves that way. Very few people get out of that trap because everything is working against them. I think it takes a very strong will and a strong, you can say, belief, and a strong heart for people to break out of those norms. Like, that's an extreme that we're talking about. We don't have as much of those extremes here in North America, but we still live by those extremes. We still live by what other people, we believe what other people tell us, for example, or how we should live our lives. So this is a really interesting topic, this whole goal setting thing, because I'm a firm believer of goal setting, and this is where I'm going to kind of contradict myself, but I also believe that you should be able to kind of go with life as well. You should be able to deal with the things that go your way, because when you set a goal, I see a lot of guys who do this. They set goals and they're constantly setting goals. They're hitting that goal, they're hitting the next goal, and their entire life just becomes goal setting and achieving goals. And they miss out on that entire journey. That's the detriment of being, so goal focused that you're not focused on living your life. That's why I think the Asian arts are so wonderful, is because they teach you to have goals, to strive for mastery, strive for excellence. And I might have shared this example before when I went to my first couple of Tai Chi lessons, for example. And the instructor, I would ask questions and he'd be like, you know what, slow down. You're taking it way too fast. This is going to take you 25 years to learn. And I'm like, what the, like, I'm going to sit here for like, expect, to be doing this for 25 years for me to master that move. Like that is total patience, right? But I just laughed inside. I was just like, this is incredible. Some of the willpower these people have, some of the commitment that they have to their goals, because they have a 30-year goal that they're striving for. I'm like, I'm trying to hit my 3-month goal. Like, this is really interesting.
I, I think you bring up another thing too. We live in such a microwave popcorn society. We want to push a couple buttons and have it be done in 30 seconds. And most goals are long term. Most goals are 6 months to 5 years out. And most people nowadays just don't even have that type of attention span to be able to set a goal like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. If you take a look at the business world, for example, forget about setting a 5-year goal, because the chances are it's going to be thrown off some way. Before, corporate world used to set 10-year goals, 15-year goals. And I talk about Toyota all the time because they're one of the main companies. I think they do a phenomenal job because they have a 30-year vision, the 40-year vision, and they try to stick to it, and they do very well in terms of sticking to it. But yeah, we are in a popcorn society. Everybody wants everything now. One of the biggest things I try to teach my kids, which has been shown to actually improve their performance over time, they followed kids throughout their life, is really self-regulation, delayed gratification. That is one of the most important things that you can learn yourself, or you could teach your children. If you can do that, you're going to be able to honestly get to those goals a lot faster, a lot easier. That's one of the things I think that the good things that my parents taught me was delayed gratification. I'm so thankful for them, that for teaching me this skill, because it just gave me the ability to do what I do today. But let's get into goal setting. Let's really talk about that, because I think if we take a look at performance, here's really why goal setting is so important, because goal setting is one of the three main things when it comes to achievement and when it comes to success. So it's goal setting first, because you have to have a goal. Otherwise, you don't, what are you aiming for? The second is what you actually, who is a person that you need to be to achieve that goal? Because even though you have a goal, you still need to be a specific type of person or personality, have certain skill sets or traits to be able to execute that. And the third piece is the actual system itself, or the process. But people don't get frustrated because they can't execute effectively, or they're not being that person. And a lot of it has to do for the reason that they haven't set their goals appropriately, or they haven't set what I call premium goals, because there's a certain way to set goals. So for example, I see a lot of people setting 12-month goals, for example. I prefer to set 90-day goals. I think that's more realistic for people. I think 90-day goals in today's society is great, because what ends up happening is that you are taking shorter strides, but you're actually measuring those more effectively. And what ends up happening is people say, I want to make X sales over a year period, for example. Well, what they tell themselves if they don't get the target in the first month is like, I'll make up for it next month, or I'll make it up for it next month, or next month's going to be better. And they eventually fall into that trap. And before you know it, that year is up and they haven't hit their sales goals. So that's why I like to do what I call 90-day sprints. The other thing too is the number of goals that people have. I see people setting goals in so many different categories. I like to break it up into three particular categories. One is your relationships. The other one is yourself, so your personal goals. And the third one is wealth. And so within each bucket, what I call them, I have three sub goals, or three subcategories. So I have 9 goals in total, for example. That way I don't have 20 of them. I have people that I see have so many different goals that they lose track of them. Right. And that is the danger of having too many goals, is when things become too complicated, you just lose sight of it. Like Nathan, you got to see my desk, because I have stickies everywhere, man. I think I go through thousands of sticky notes. It's just ridiculous. And you know how much they charge for these things these days? It's ridiculous how much they actually charge for sticky notes. I am so honestly disappointed, because they are such a cheap thing, but people make a fortune off this crap. 3M, for example, is the brilliant, right? So that's a tangent, man. Just you can get me off that. But my desk is full of these things, because I have my notes, but I found probably about a year ago, I had so many goals that I was all over the place. Like I was so scattered, man. It was just ridiculous. And so I basically said, I got to prune these goals down and really focus on three main buckets, because anything more than that, and I'm just going to forget about them. Like how many times have we set a goal and we just forgotten about it?
Well, not just that, when we have 15, 20, 30 different goals, we've only got so much energy, we've only got so much time, and the ones that are really important get neglected for in pursuit of ones that really don't matter that much. And I think that being goal orientated, it's something that a lot of us deal with. We start to bite off more than we can chew. We start, especially once you start having a little bit of success, then everybody comes to you with these new opportunities, and the the fear of missing out, the opportunity chasing. These are some things that we've talked about on the podcast before, but high achieving males and females, but I mean, we talk about guys here, high achieving males, we tend to uh we tend to want to go north, but we've got something off to the east, and we've got something off to the west, and we've got something to the southwest, and they're all vying for our attention at the same time. And by taking steps towards those things, it means that we can't be taking steps towards our true north.
Yeah, bang on. I'm so glad you brought that on, because you're talking about prioritization and opportunity cost, which is another piece. There's only so many resources that we have. There's only so many waking hours that we have. So I think we absolutely need to prioritize our goals. I see this again with entrepreneurs when they have multiple different businesses that they're trying to create or grow, and again, they're not setting any priorities, so they're doing everything, or they're giving equal amount of attention to all their businesses, and none of their businesses are growing. So prioritization is absolutely critical. Another thing to pay attention to, and I think this is where some people get caught, or is they don't have belief in their goal. In order for you to be able to achieve your goal, you have to believe that you can achieve it. If you set a goal, and a lot of people talk about, you got 10x your goals, which I do talk about, but you still have to believe in that goal. You still have to have an underlying belief that you're going to be able to achieve it, because if you don't, you're not going to do the things that you need to do to get there. You set yourself up for failure right off the bat. So set goals that you truly believe you can do. And that's why smaller goals are important, because a smaller goal doesn't look so big, right? If you're trying to lose 50 pounds over a year, well, if you tell yourself you can lose a pound this week, that doesn't seem so daunting, does it? Right? That seems like it's achievable.
I think one other thing, and this is what really helps me, since you mentioned notes, this is something that I do. A lot of times when people set goals, they just have the outcome. They say, this is what I want to get to, but they don't actually create a roadmap. They don't actually say, well, what's the first step that I need to take in order to get moving in that direction? And so for me, I have a Remarkable, and I have just tons of notes in there. And a lot of them are goals, and they're broken down into, I need to take this step, and this step to actually get there. The amount of people who set goals, and it's like, I want to have a best-selling book, and they never even research on how to create a script, or how to create a compelling character, or how to create a plot, or how to actually get started writing a book. So 5 years from now, they still have the same goal, but they've never taken a single step because they never plotted out what's the first step.
Yeah, again, you're bang on, man. I had an intern sit in one of my coaching calls, and I was talking to this gentleman about he wanted to lose weight and he wanted to get more fit. And so we went through basically setting his goals and going through the process. And I basically said to him, and this is a conversation that the intern and I had after the observation. He's like, I was watching you and you were pressing him to make his first few steps. Why is that? And I said, because if we make a decision to do something, if he makes a decision to get fitter, but he doesn't take action, if my client doesn't take action, then the chances of him actually executing are far slimmer. So I make sure that when I'm on a call with someone and we set a goal, for example, I'm always, what's your next step? When are you going to do it? When are you going to report back to me? That's that's how we make sure that it's being done, is that the moment you make a decision, you always take an immediate action in that direction. That is so That is so important, Nathan, that point that you just brought up, because again, everybody wants to do things. Everybody wants to hit a goal. Everybody wants to get fit. But a few days later, they sit there and they're in the same position. It's because they haven't taken that first step, that initial piece. And that first step can be tough for a lot of people. That first step can be uneasy. There might be a lot of unknowns in that first step as well. And it takes a lot of faith, and that's why it's important to just take that first step, because you probably realize that that first step wasn't so hard, and that gives you some confidence.
Yeah, once you get that first step, you're like, oh wow, I got some momentum here. Okay, so we're almost out of time. Is there anything else that we should leave the listener with before we're out of here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to goal setting, your goal should do one thing. At the end of the day, it needs to get you fired up. It's got to get you out of bed. It's got to get you excited. It's got to get you motivated. It's got to get you inspired. Because if you set a goal and you're like, well, yeah, it seems pretty cool, you're not going to do it. You're not going to execute on it. You're going to force yourself to do it. You are going to have to push yourself to execute that goal versus being pulled towards that goal. There is a massive distinction. If you set premium goals, you're going to wake up every day. You're also going to see that, you know what, you're going to see these signs. The universe is also going to give you signs that you're headed in the right direction, or maybe you're headed in the wrong direction. So create goals, set premium goals that actually get you fired up. That's how you have a quality life. That's how you hit your goals. That's how you become super successful in life, is that first stage of setting goals properly.
Okay, so I want to do something weird for the end of the episode. A lot of times we plug where people can check out more episodes of the podcast. I've actually, one of the benefits of having you as a client of mine, you've helped me with some of this stuff and helped me overcome some mental hurdles in the past. If people want to, or they're interested in talking to you about maybe hiring you to help them with their goal setting, with getting over some mental blockades, or reaching that next level in their business, is there a way that people can get in contact with you?
Yeah, I'm more than happy if you email me directly, as long as you're not spamming me stuff. I'm more than happy to respond to you directly. My email is coach@purdeepsangha.com. So just my first and last name.com.
Awesome. Pretty fantastic episode, man. Thank you for putting this together. And until next time, we will catch you later.
Yeah, this was a good one, man. Take care.
We are streaming on YouTube. And let me go ahead and just start the recording on my end over here.
Right on.
Record on this computer. This is Male Entrepreneur Podcast, episode number 126, I believe. And we are live in 3, 2. All right. Welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur with your host, the alpha male himself, Purdeep Sangha. Purdeep, how you doing today, man?
Good, man. So I don't know. Should I bark? Should I howl? Should I roar today? What do you
Roar.
think?
We got the lion energy.
That's awesome. I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm excited about this topic. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And something that just spurred basically this topic in me when I was having some recent conversations. So let's just get right into it, because we're talking about respect for elders. And you were making some really interesting comments before we were going live about baby boomers. So maybe you could share a little bit about that.
So there's a meme right now. It's okay boomer. It's a way to dismiss it's real popular amongst Generation Z and millennials. And when anybody older than them tries to old splain something to them, they get written off with a okay boomer. And I think it's partially deserved, because the baby boomers made the baby boomers here, at least here in America, they're known as the greatest generation. Or I guess the offspring of the greatest generation. I'm not sure. But a lot of their financial decisions, a lot of the things that they did during the 80s, a lot of the overconsumption, and a lot of the let's go ahead and put our grandchildren in debt so that we can live the lifestyles that we want to live. A lot of their decisions have left millennials and Generation Z not so hopeful about the future. And so when when millennials are struggling to find a job, and then boomers tell them, well, you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, or when I was your age, I already owned a home. And so they say, well, okay, boomer, because the boomers don't understand what the millennials are going through. um the problem that I have with it is, a lot of times, I know, being, I guess, middle-aged almost now, I know when I was a teenager, I thought I knew everything, and now that I'm older, I realize how ignorant I was as a teenager. I also realize how ignorant I am right now, because I thought I knew everything when I was a teenager, and now I'm realizing, crap, I'm probably going to have completely different beliefs when I'm 70 or 80 than I have now,
Mhm.
because as you grow, you learn things, and it used to be valued. I mean, we look at a lot of cultures that valued the elders. They were the most valuable members of the community because they had that knowledge. And now it seems like we don't value them, we don't listen to them, we dismiss them. And maybe partially it's deserved, but on the other end of the spectrum, it kind of terrifies me as where we're going as a country and as a world, because things that one thing in particular, communism, a lot of the boomer generation and a lot of people that I know that came from, like, escaped from communist countries, they warn about how dangerous it is. And the millennials and the Gen Z are completely bought into socialism and communism, and they don't listen to the warnings of the previous generation. So I think that's just one example, but there seems to be a lot of examples of where we could be learning from the elders and we just don't even listen to them anymore.
Yeah, wow, there's a lot there that you brought up. I think all valid points in terms of the baby boomers because they didn't do a lot of stuff correctly. I know that for sure. I also have a different take on baby boomers. I think our generation, Nathan, yours and mine, like we're same age. I think we're screwing the next generation over because we're the ones that are taking on more debt, right? It's our generation. At least the baby boomers actually spent the money that they had in cash, not necessarily borrowed. We are screwing the next day. I know in the area that I live in, for example, the Toronto area, it's ridiculous. The younger generation can't even buy a home. They're buying condos. They're living in these little shoe boxes, and everybody's getting screwed from that standpoint. It's because people in my generation are spending way too much money on homes that they shouldn't be spending on. So I think every generation has a downfall. I think the new millennials, and I'll be completely stereotypical about this in terms of Gen Z, is I think, yeah, a lot of them are entitled. A lot of them don't have the wisdom of and experience in life, yet they feel like they know it all. I face this a lot, especially when I work in consult in the corporate world, for example, or whatever it is. A lot of these guys, these young whippersnapper guys and gals, they've they've some they see someone like Mark Zuckerberg or they see some other young person that's created this hot shot company from nothing, this tech company, and they boom. So they now believe that these younger people know it all. No, I'll tell you right now, Mark Zuckerberg might be a smart person when it comes to Facebook, but I bet you his life skills probably suck because just look at him in terms of the way he behaves. All of these kinds of things. There's a difference between knowledge and there's a difference and wisdom. And I truly believe that the elder generation has wisdom, and that's what you get with age. This for me, and I miss this quite a bit. I miss having my grandfather around. I miss having my grandmother around. I miss having my dad around, especially my dad and my grandfather, because they have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of wisdom that came from the old days in terms of like the old teachings, principles, for example. And I wish I would have just soaked that up more. And now that they're not around, and my dad's passed away, his younger brother passed away 6 months after he passed away, and we have one guy, my dad's older brother, who's not exactly, I would say, a stand-up person, that is the sole male basically in our family line from my dad's side that really knows basically about our family background. And that hit me. I'm like, after this person is gone, there is zero history. All of that's going to be wiped out. There's no hard drive. There's nothing to say where we came from, what our family history. I don't know that information. I wish I did. But these are the things that I think we need to take on because there's a lot. of importance when it comes to that kind of stuff, of the teachings that we have, the family backgrounds, because it's those stories that are important. If we take a look at how humans were uh, bonded together in terms of how we were able to survive, how we created communities, a big part of that, one of the main parts, is based on storytelling, is based on the ability for us to share through generations the tales. And a lot of that is going away, and we're relying on the internet. And I got a beef, actually. I got a beef, and I've talked about this beef before, in terms of there's so many overnight so-called experts these days that can go on the internet, start a blog, start a website, and become an expert, and say that this is the way life is and this is what you should do. And people are following that, and it's so easy. Social influencers. But a lot of that, really, I call it skin deep. There is really little depth to that. And people are getting impacted by that. And I want to share a story here. I'm working for a client, and part of the work that I'm doing here with this particular project is calling up people that are, they're orchardists, and a lot of these people have been orchardists for a while. And I was amazed. I talked to this one gentleman. He's 86 years old, and he's still running an 80-acre orchard.
Wow.
Him and his wife, and I was just like, this is phenomenal. His wife's like 83, he's 86. I'm like, that is a big chunk of land as well. That is a lot of work. But it was so fascinating because I spent 30 minutes with this gentleman who's been working for 70 plus years. And I just got a wealth of knowledge. I grew up on an orchard, for example, but the amount of knowledge that he had, the amount of history he had, I was completely blown away. Like, to the point where I got off the call and I said, man, someone has to record what this gentleman was talking about, because he talked about things from the government, he talked about immigration, he talked about all of these sorts of things over the span of his 86-year life that I learned from. And I was just like, wow, so many people flock to the internet, flock to Google to find the answers, but we don't go to the people that have the true wisdom. Words on the internet don't tell us the real story, the real background, the real feelings, and a lot of the times the accuracy behind what actually have happened in those events. So this is where this topic came from, Nathan. It was just really talking to this one gentleman that just really said, man, this is like night and day.
So something that comes up for me is, I guess, with current events, especially, um, society's changed, norms have changed, and certain things that used to be, I guess, commonplace beliefs, even just a generation ago. Um, my dad was, he was a Mexican, and he was in and out of prison most of his life. And inside of prison, at least here, race is a huge thing. People are divided by race. And so my dad had a lot of racist beliefs, especially against black people. He was not, Mexicans and black people just didn't really get along in the prison and in the culture that my dad grew up in. And us, my brother and sisters, we kind of looked at those beliefs, and we grew up in multicultural, a lot of black friends, a lot of Mexican friends, a lot of Asian friends. And we were just like, how could dad be so stupid in his opinions about black people? Um, so there's certain things where we look at, and here in America right now, we're having this cultural revolution where everybody who was a slave owner, we're not allowed to even talk about them anymore. We have to change the names of the high schools because this person owned two slaves, and so they can't have a high school named after them. And they wrote a document that our country was founded upon, and we're not even allowed to talk about that document anymore. And this throw the baby out with the bathwater mentality, where we say, well, you made one or two mistakes, or you had some really deplorable, disgusting beliefs that were common for the time. Therefore, we can just erase you from history. We can erase all the lessons that we could learn from you. I see that as very dangerous. And I see other countries in the past that have gone through similar things. China being one of them. China had the Great Leap Forward back in the 60s and 70s. And a lot of that was uh, we can just throw everything out that the elders know because
Mm.
the elders are idiots. And it scares me. Like, I'm being honest, it scares me. I'm afraid of where culturally we're going with this. And I just wanted to get your take because um, you've talked about some of the racism that you experienced as a kid. And we want to move past certain things that our elders held on to. At the same time, I think it's valuable not to just throw everything out. I don't know though. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. I can tell you, from a race perspective, yeah, I've experienced it myself. I see that. I don't agree with looking back on society and looking back on times and basically basing our decisions today based on what happened 50, 60, 30 years ago and stereotyping people today. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that we need to do that. I think it's ignorant. I think it's idiotic. Changing names and stuff like that. Like if someone's really adamant about that, that's fine. But here's how I look at that. In 100 years from now, who knows? Maybe even less. I'm sure it's going to be less at the rate they're going when it comes to artificial meat, for example. We're going to look and say, man, it was brutalizing to eat live animals, for example, live meat. We raise cows where people are going to be like, what? You actually ate a live cow? So what are we going to do? We're going to look at those people and be like, you're barbaric? No, like that's just the way times change. I think things happen. I'm not for, slave ownership or racism. I face that myself. I think those people that can't get past treating another human being as a human being are just, there's something wrong inside. But there's times like that too. There's people grow up that way and their beliefs are created by other people. So you cannot always blame the individual. I blame society as a whole. And I think that's why it's important to really take a look at the micro level as well as the macroscopic level and see what's actually happening. You have to be able to take a look at both. In my culture, I can share with you my experience. We were taught, because from the Indian background, the Sikh background, to respect our elders. We were taught that when someone older than you speaks, you listen and that you respect them. And even today, I do that. I notice when I speak to anybody that is older than me, for example, I put myself in not in a subservient manner, but I put myself in a learning manner when I'm like, this person's older, this person might know something that I don't know. So therefore, I'm a student of that person. That's what the meaning of seek means. It's a learner, right? It's disciple. It's someone that is seeking knowledge all the time. That has allowed me to actually learn a lot of things and actually be, you can say, uh, neutral in a lot of respects also. But I also want to share something else as well. Like when it comes to racism, you know, and I've shared this before too, is there's a lot of racism in our culture internally in India within, you have Sikhs, you have Hindus, you have Muslims. A lot of this Muslims and the Sikhs don't get along. For example, you have the Hindus and the Muslims that don't get along. You have the Hindus and the Sikhs that don't get along. Like this is just one of those things that we continue to live through in almost, I think every country has these racial or these religious tensions. We just have to get past that. Maybe this next generation is a generation that can actually get past that. I'm hoping that they can. This Gen Z, right? The millennials. I think I do see this. I see race as less of an issue, but on the flip side, I see a lot more arrogance, right? I see a lot of inexperience, a lot of less weight on wisdom and more weight on the internet and social media. That's where I think there's a balance. I don't know what to tell you, man. It'll be interesting to see how my kids are, how they grow up, right? I have a 7-year-old, your daughter, for example, right, Bella, in terms of what they grow up. I'm telling you, I'm trying to teach them respect as much as I can. It's hard though, man, because I'm sure you've experienced it, or maybe you have my kids. I have to push for the respect now. It's not like it was when I grew up, where basically the respect was there. It's like I have to earn it, and it's ridiculous. It's sometimes as a dad, sometimes I'll sit there and I'll be eating a piece of chocolate, and my son be like, "Dad, why are you eating that? Can I have some?" I'm like, "No, it's past your bedtime. You shouldn't be eating this." "Well, why are you eating it?" And I'm like, "Damn it, I'm your dad, man. go back to bed, like go to bed. Like, don't ask me these questions, right? Like, that's not something I would be asking my dad. Why are you able to eat it and I'm not? Like, I just get a whack across the side of the head. But it's a different time.
I think in a completely flip um, of respect for elders, I don't really deal with that stuff with Bella, and it's because ever since she was a kid, I've always treated her as an equal. I've always treated her as somebody that even when I knew she wasn't capable of making informed decisions, I still encouraged her to make informed decisions. When
Mm.
she would ask me, "How come things are like this?" I would ask her, "Why do you think things are like this?" And so I always encouraged her to think. I've always, when we have days where we get to do something, I ask her, "Well, what would you like to do today?" Or "What do you think the best thing to do is?" So with her, um, I think me and her have a mutual respect because I've always treated her as if I
Mm.
respect her. Um, and that's something that I didn't get from my parents, and that's something that made me rebel as a teenager, was the fact that once once I realized, oh, I've got a little bit of autonomy, I went overboard with it, and I became the typical rebellious teenager. Um, I want Bella, and I don't know, maybe it'll blow up in my face, but I've always wanted Bella to understand that if I want respect from her, I need to give her respect back. And maybe that's something also that we don't do enough as the elders.
Yeah, no, I think that's a smart move. I think it's smart to treat your kids, obviously, with respect. I don't know if I treat my kids as equals just because their brains aren't there, but I think you have a smart approach in terms of asking questions and asking for their opinions. I think all too often we dismiss our kids' opinions, and there's times I get a schooling lesson from my kids, and it's like, I didn't even think about it from that perspective. Like, you're absolutely right. Yeah, like, that just makes sense. Okay, that's fine. I'm just trying to think of it. Man, I can't remember what it was, but my son said something to me the other day that just blew me away, and I was just like, "Wow, where did he get that from?"
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it was incredible.
what the old saying, the truth will be heard from the mouth of babes. I guess the main takeaway is the respect does need to go both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, my whole point, I think, for this episode was really just appreciating the people that we have in our lives and appreciating, especially the elders, because there's times. And if you still have grandparents out there, if you still have parents out there, you still have uncles and aunts that are older that have a bunch of wisdom, I highly encourage you to just reach out, hear their stories. Like, it's just so phenomenal. I think that's something that is a lost art these days too, is just the desire to hear other people's stories and just to get to know them as a person in terms of how they grew up from childhood. Like, that to me is so fulfilling. I don't know what it is, but I think it's becoming a lost art. And I think if we bring that back, I think it can bring people in this, even the community back, and all these racial tensions, all these kinds of things. We'll probably realize that a lot of us, regardless of race, regardless of background, have had similar challenges throughout our life that we had to overcome.
Mhm. Okay, Pradeep, man, we went all over the place with this one, but some stuff that I think needs to be talked about and some discussions that on a more societal level should be happening out there. If people want to check out more episodes of the podcast, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, check out YouTubeformen.com as well as mailpodcast.com.
All right, man. Until next time, we will catch you later.
Yeah, take care.